Okay, please do. Thank you.
Okay, we're started and recording.
Okay, welcome everyone to the November Newcastle City Council meeting. I am Linda Ratchford, City Council President, and joining me are Councilperson Suzanne Souter, Councilperson Michael Platt, Councilperson Russell Smith, and Councilperson Valerie Leary. In addition, we have our City Administrator, Bill Barthel, Kathy Walls, our finance, and Kim Bergville, who's hosting the meeting. In addition to Kathy Rick, our stenographer, we also have our Chief of Police, Rick McCabe, and our City Solicitor, Dan Losco. Joining us also are Janet Carlin, our City Treasurer, and also hopefully soon, our City Clerk, Brian Whitaker. And we appreciate you joining us tonight. I wanted to mention that tomorrow is Veterans Day, and I want to recognize all the veterans that have served to keep us safe. And thank you for their service and for your continued service within our communities. At this point, I will go to the first agenda item, which is October 13th public hearing meetings, our October 13th public hearing minutes, the October 13th regular meeting, October 20th budget workshop. Do I have any comments on any of these meetings?
I have one comment on the October 13th regular meeting. On page 7, under the section first reading of Ordinance 530, it says that I both moved and seconded the motion. So I don't frankly remember which I did. I recalled either moving or seconding, but I don't remember which, and I don't know who the other person was.
I would say we just remove that since we're not sure. It is not required that that be in the minutes.
Okay.
Okay. And the mayor, Mike Carana, has just joined us. Also, we have, I don't think I mentioned Jeff Bergstrom, our building official, and our city engineer, Dave Athey, is also on tonight. So anything else on the minutes?
Make a motion to be approved.
As amended. Second.
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we have approved the minutes as amended. At this point, I would like to ask our city treasurer to present the information ending October 31st, 2020.
Yes, good evening, everyone. This report is the unaudited report as of October 31st, 2020. Total unrestricted funds, $4,091,483.93. Total restricted funds, $2,369,308.30. Total cash in the accounts, $6,460,792.23. That's all I have today.
Any questions for the treasurer? Any comments? So at this point, do I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report unaudited?
So moved.
A move for Ms. Leary, a second.
Second.
Second for Mr. Smith. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we have approved the treasurer's report unanimously as
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm sure we'll be talking to you more this later on this evening because we'll review our budget as well.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Thank you for all your help. I'd like to go to reports from the city administrator and staff.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. I have two things for council this evening at this point in time. Delaware Street update. We're pretty much ready to mill and overlay the street at this point. However, in communication with MSC and with Pam Petone, they will not be able to remove all of their poles. At this point, they're projecting the end of December. Now, Pam assures me and Jeff that they can remove those poles without damaging a newly paved street. However, we do have some concerns that if there are issues with the poles and we go ahead and do the paving at this point, and for whatever reason, and we're just being cautious, if for whatever reason one of those poles damages that newly paved street, we're gonna have to patch it. And so at this point in time, we're just about in the middle of November. We're thinking that to err to the side of caution at this point, that we just wait until the springtime to finish the project. Jeff, I don't know if you want to add anything to my comments.
I'd like to see the pavement perfect, at least for some period of time, and taking the poles out is no easy feat. I know they're very competent at what they do, but just one slip will, some unknown underground, and we might be in a patch situation. So I think it's probably not a bad idea to wait till spring to pave it.
Which poles are we speaking to?
The utility poles from 4th Street down to the river,
Okay.
the wooden poles that are,
Oh, the wooden poles.
the
Okay.
wooden poles that aren't there.
Well, it's because everything's being buried underground.
Gotcha.
This
Hey,
is
Council-
President Ratchford. Are there any issues regarding money, payment from anyone like Delmarva Power or anyone to compensate us for the rest of the paving project?
Oh, no, we received the 161 from Delmarva.
And what about like for closing out our construction contract? Are there any issues there if we postpone?
Oh, with Cirillo?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Again, Jeff, do you want to address that?
No, we're current on our bill. The least unforeseen part of the project is the part that remains, the mill and
Right.
overlay.
Right.
In the absence of finding something we haven't located yet under the road surface, we don't expect any extras. It's just a matter of quantities, and it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, but as to us being current with those folks, and absolutely.
Oh yeah, we're
There's no issue there, if that's what you're asking, Mrs.
Yeah,
Wright.
whether there was a problem with we delayed was really the
Yeah,
question.
no, I don't,
Okay.
right, that's what I thought you were asking, no.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Councilman Platt, just a comment and a question. Will it affect the snow plowing and all the way the street is now? Not at all.
No, I don't believe so. I mean, it's pretty much in the same condition it's been for the past
30 years. I'm just wondering about the color. It's
No,
going
no,
down,
no,
the
that's a great
concrete.
question. No, I understand.
I mean, there's
That's
just
a very-
different grades.
That's a really good question. I don't believe it will. Again, Jeff, I'll default to you on that.
the part of the pavement that's got some disturbances right adjacent to the curbs, where curbs were replaced and reset. And it's a very small section, nothing the snow plows really, their tires wouldn't go there, the plows wouldn't really notice it. It's just not going to be an issue, I don't believe.
Fair enough. And I think it's a wise decision also, because there was a section on Bald Avenue where they did some yard work or they put something in. And it's not that they did a lot of damage to the street. They just left tread marks. So here we are, we paved all, and it is what it is, so to say, but I think it's a wise decision to wait.
Any other questions or comments on that item for me?
No.
Okay, if not, then Mrs. Ratchford had asked that we research seasonal events, so I'll ask Kim to just put that up on the screen if you would, Kim.
Okay, hold on one second.
Okay.
While we're waiting, Ms. Rothel, I had a question on boarded properties. How long can a house be boarded up? I notice we have 5 of them currently boarded up, because that is pretty unsightly when house is boarded. Is there restrictions on that?
Well, again, it depends. There's a process that needs to be followed. A boarded up / vacant property, there's a number of things going on. Okay, so we charge folks for not, so if somebody comes in and registers it as a vacant property, that's one thing. That checks one box for them allowing the property to remain vacant. Then there are other issues associated with that property, which could be issues if it's boarded up too long with the Board of Health, fining them for excessive fees, which we do. And there is, as I've stated on numerous occasions, number of processes that we need to go through depending on each situation, as far as the house actually being boarded. And we do, you're right, we do have a few in town right now. We had one house close by here that we fined. They paid the $8,500 in fines, the mortgage company did. It continues to remain vacant. And in fact, Jeff and I were just talking about that this morning. And we have had situations like that where residents, investors, mortgage companies will come in and pay the fines that then precludes us from being able to take the property to sheriff's sale. So we then continue to just fine people for, legally for the things that they're violating and continue to do that. We've had situations where, in fact, on a property in Dobbinsville, where we had a property owner come in and pay us $8,000 because we were about to go to the sheriff's sale. And a year later, we ended up actually going to sheriff's sale for almost the same amount because we started fining them. And then you get on the sheriff's sale list, which takes about 6 months to process, and then another couple of months before we actually get title to the property. And Dan, I don't know, you want to, maybe add to that? It's unfortunate that it's not a simple straight line in all of these situations.
This is a solicitor. I think the only thing I'd add is that typically if you have a vacant property that's boarded for any length of time, it's usually showing some serious maintenance issues as well, which will lead to other fines. And when it gets to the egregious point, they end up on my desk for a munition sale.
Right.
So, that's kind of
what we do.
There's a series of fines. The longer a property is vacant, the fines escalate. They start for free for the first year as long as you're registered.
Correct.
$500 for the second year, $1,000 for the third, $2,000 for the next, and then it increases to $3,500 and $5,000 as well. So it gets aggressive at that point, and if the fees aren't paid, we'll take it to sale.
We'll take it to sale.
I have a couple questions, and actually it's on the same line kind of as Linda. So there's one of our houses that has been condemned as a result of the fire. And how long can it sit there as such?
Well, I think you're talking about the same house that I'm talking about, that we fined the $8,000 for.
And they came,
and we got a check this, I think last week, for the $8,000, not from the property owner and not from the property actually having gone to foreclosure by the mortgage company. I believe it was the mortgage company and or the people that they use to manage their vacant properties. So that's exactly the property I was referring to. And so Jeff and I talked about that, and it's a matter of, I'm trying to find out from the property owner or the mortgage company what their intentions are. Now, I believe that particular property had a sheriff's sale notification on it from the mortgage company prior to COVID. So now I don't know if they're continuing through that foreclosure or not. But that's an excellent question. We then
how
again.
how do you foreclose on a condemned property? Does that property have to come down, or is it just condemned for living?
No, that property is structurally sound, I believe. Jeff, and then Dan, if you want to maybe add to that.
Well, this is the solicitor again. I'm not familiar with this particular property, but one of the things we've discussed recently is the Board of Building Appeals. If we have a dangerous or vacant property, to the extent where it should be demolished, for example, the code official can cite them for that purpose. If they don't comply, they can be brought before the Board of Building Appeals, and the city, and ultimately can be ordered with the city paying for it and liening the property for the cost, which again will turn into typically a munition action. But the fact that that the property is damaged by fire right now, my guess is that mortgage company, as opposed to foreclosing, is pursuing insurance proceeds as a means of recovering their debt.
Got it.
And
And that particular, Mrs. Leary, that particular property, to my knowledge, is not, we remedied, there was an issue with the front porch and a column, which we went in and we took care of that because that was in danger of collapsing. That was taken care of. And this company, this mortgage company, paid us for that. I don't believe the rest of, we did that and we boarded it up. We fixed a portion of the roof and we, of course, we billed them for that. And that was the 8,000. Now, had they not done that, we were getting set to take it to foreclosure. So, but to Dan's point, and again, I'm going to ask Jeff, I don't believe that that property, other than that column, is structurally unsound.
No, it needs some repair work on the inside because of at the point of the fire in the basement, but it's part of a twin and it's not going anywhere.
I have some more questions regarding properties, but maybe we should go to this and come back to it or continue.
Why don't we go ahead and continue with this particular, since we're on properties, then we'll go to if we could just wait and then go back to the next topic the city administrator is going to cover. So
Okay.
please go ahead, Ms. Leary.
And just looking here, and I believe, I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but I'm just wondering if the answer at some point in the future can change. We have a number of properties here that have been vacant for 4+ years. They pay, apparently they'll be fined X amount of money over time. They pay it up, they get behind again, they pay it up, these properties are just sitting there. Some are eyesores, some are not. Is there anything we can do, or do we have to change something in our code in order to be able to do it? That's obviously legal to do. If your house is set there for 6 years and no one's lived in it. Dan, that might be
I'll take a stab at it. I mean, all cases can be different. If you have a vacant property, it's been boarded, but it's being maintained otherwise, it's in proper condition, it's registered, they're paying their fees for the registration year after year. There's nothing that I know of, and Jeff can correct me if I'm wrong, that can force us to require that they have the house occupied or that they market it for sale. The code mechanism that we have is we can force you to repair it. We can order it to be demolished if it's dangerous and irreparable. We can take it to munitions sale if fines are unpaid. But if they're paying all the fines and if they're registered and they otherwise don't maintain a dangerous building, there's really nothing I know that we can do under the current code that would force a property to be still sold or occupied under those circumstances.
So you mentioned under the current code. So being realistic, is there any change to the code that could be considered, that if your house is vacant for 4 or 5 years, no one's living in it, whatever, that we can, I'm not sure what I'm looking for, that I don't want the houses to be vacant anymore. So either sell your house or come live in it yourself.
This is the solicitor again. I think probably the most effective thing to do would be to increase your fining mechanism as the years go by. So you may not want to be super aggressive about it in years 1 or 2, but if it's going on more than a couple of years, you may want to get very aggressive about the fines so that it becomes really difficult for the normal owner to pay them. And that allows us to get it on the forced sale list. But other than that, I don't know of anything where we can force somebody to occupy a house or we can force somebody to sell a house unless we're taking it to a sheriff's sale. So it strikes me that increasing the fines would make it more of a challenge for that kind of a person who just wants to pay as he goes and leaves his property boarded up.
So, okay, I'll revisit this at a later time. I'll have some more questions, but well,
Isn't this the
but that,
same thing we've been discussing regarding 400 Delaware Street for a year or more? They pay the fines, and the house is not unstable enough to be a public safety health risk, so we can't do anything. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely, Bill Barthel, absolutely, Ms. Souter. That's an example that I'm thinking of as well. There we were on the precipice of going to sheriff's sale. Okay, we sent our notice. There were a lot of fines and excessive fees, vacant building fees that needed to be paid. I believe to the tune of it was a significant amount that was paid. And then they brought in contractors to upgrade the exterior of the property and remedy those concerns. And then you're right, keeping up with the vacant building fees. And you know, there's a building that's not boarded up, but is it an absolutely, I mean, that's a good example of I think what also Mrs. Leary's talking about.
This is Russ Smith, and it seems to me that the fees are not actually fees, but penalties. They should hurt enough that people don't want to pay them, but want to do something with the property. And maybe, as the solicitor points out, maybe our fees are too low when people just see them as an annual fee you pay.
I think the councilperson Larry, I think that's something we should look at. So
This is Councilor Ratchford. How about city administrator and our city solicitor come back with a recommendation for discussion in the next meeting? Would that be agreeable, Ms. Leary?
yes, thank you.
We'll put that on as your topic. Okay,
Madam President, can I have 2 seconds?
sure.
I know it's extremely costly to go through these processes, and I know a lot of work has to go into it with staff and with the solicitor. And I don't know what the breakdown is. It's probably a break-even point, I would say. But is there any way that we could take money that we get from fines and we get from these places where people decide, hey, we are going to fix these houses up, and parlay it into what we just did with the partnership with the trust, and maybe build that fund up a little bit so people who are having trouble maybe maintaining or letting their house go vacant, we can lend them the money just like we do with the $6,500 or the $2,500 we did with the trust, and then at the turn of the sale we get that money back. I'm just saying, I guess using any excess money from the fines to help property owners, and I don't think it's going to be a lot, just because I know the legal costs involved. But talk about that when we talk about everything else a little later on.
Well, this is Council President. That would be information to come back at the next meeting too. Not only, the fines in terms of making sure that people understand this is a bad thing for the community to have a lot of vacant buildings, especially when they're boarded up. They're very unsightly. And then second, what are our costs to actually manage this? Because there's also the time of our building official to work with them, and also our code enforcement officer. And so some understanding as to Mr. Platt's question next month too. Okay, thank you. Anything else on buildings? We'll go to the topic Mr. Barthel was going to discuss in terms of events.
Okay, as I was beginning to say, or as I said, Mrs. Ratchford asked if we would just let everyone know what's happening in terms of the events that are normally planned this time of the year. And so I thought it'd be just as easy to put it up on the screen. You can see Arisafa is going to be doing their wreath workshop. The Spirit of Christmas, the house tours are canceled. Dickens events, the ball and the Victorian teas are canceled. You can see what they're doing in regard to the Presbyterian Church, the things that they're doing there in lieu of the fact that they're not really holding any events per se. They are selling soup, bread, baked goods, and giving away cookies. So they are doing something, but it's minimal, obviously, compared to normal years. You can see what the Newcastle Historical Society is doing. They're sponsoring a holiday house decorating contest, open to all residents. And the Newcastle Courthouse Museum is going to partner with Arasatha to present a webinar on their annual wreath making in the city. The Newcastle City Police and Goodwill Fire Company Adopt a Family and Christmas Party for Kids is going ahead. I believe regardless, and maybe Rick can comment on that, but they're also, the NCCP and the Goodwill Fire Company are still tentatively planning the Christmas party for the children on December 19th, but have not made a final decision on that. So I don't know, Chief, are you maybe just comment on the Adopt a Family?
You're muted.
Yes, so I am actually waiting on Captain Sugar to finalize details with Goodwill. I think the thought is that we may pay a visit using social distancing guidelines as opposed to a gathering. So, and the guidelines, if they're not already out on Facebook, they should be within the next day or two.
All right, thanks. And if there's no questions for me, Madam President, then Jeff, do you have anything you need to add or would like to add at this point?
This is Russ Smith.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman.
Bill, are we planning on doing anything for city employees for the holidays this year?
As far as a gathering?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Any other questions? Jeff, you have anything else to add?
No.
Chief?
Yes, thank you. Just a few items. In your packet, you'll see that at the top, we had some thefts from vehicle again, another small rash this month early on. Again, these are all related to countywide issues that are plaguing all the neighborhoods around us. And just to give you some background, so the MO behind some of this is they're young, they're young kids typically in cars, sometimes stolen cars, just cruising through neighborhoods looking for vehicles that are unlocked. So they may have one or two people out walking with a car trailing, trying car doors, and if they find something open, they take what they can. And then in some cases, if their keys are left in it, then they're going to steal that car and move on to another neighborhood. So, you know, the point from this is lock your cars and don't leave your keys in it. And then again, just we want to keep folks calling 911 when they hear or see anything suspicious. We recently had a car downtown on 3rd Street where somebody crawled underneath it and sawed the catalytic converter off of it. That was called in. Unfortunately, we did not get there in time. So, you know, they're getting rather brave. But you know, we did get the call on that one, and I think we may have a lead on that. A couple of incidents that may have made some news this weekend. I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page. We investigated a kidnapping over the weekend, which came in late Saturday night. I know it got some publicity, mostly social media. Our investigation revealed that it was a domestic-related incident. The victim was recovered safe, and all the appropriate people that should have been charged were charged. So there was no real there was no threat to the public at all. It was a domestic-related issue. Our detectives right now are investigating a shooting in the Penn Valley area. Nobody was hit. We're investigating. It came in as a shots fired complaint. We found some evidence of a weapon being discharged, and our detectives are working on that. Hopefully, we'll have some more information at the next meeting. We're also getting complaints about shootings or shots fired complaints from the Marsh area in and around Van Dyke. We haven't been dispatched. They're coming. The complaints are coming in via email to the city. So we're still working on getting word out that the best way to get a response is to call 911. We're talking to DENREC about this because it's probably going to be some hunters in the Marshy area, and their laws are a lot better than ours. We could, if we get somebody firing a weapon in the city, we can certainly charge them with the ordinance. But if they're illegally hunting, that's going to have some teeth behind it. So, as soon as we get a call, we'll get DENREC involved and then we can work together to maybe apprehend some folks that are back there hunting. And then the last thing I wanted to share is that our website was launched about 10 days ago or so. We put something out on Facebook with the link. I just want to make sure we share it with everybody. It's www.newcastlecitypolice.com. We got very lucky. Can't get any easier than that. So we really want to push this. It's got a lot of information in there. We're going to become more and more transparent as we go. I'm working on an annual report that we'll submit to council, hopefully January, February, that will have a lot of information on it. We're going to publish it on the website so folks can see a lot of things. It's also an opportunity for people to get access to different ways they can get in touch with us so that it gets to us faster. The shooting complaints in the Marshy area is an example where if somebody had access to our website, they'd see that if they clicked on a link, they could send an email directly to somebody that a staff officer would get through our phone. And then we could, if we needed to address it immediately, we could, or if we could direct them in, to the right source. So again, it's newcastlecitypolice.com. And that's all I have.
Anything
Councilman
else for
Platt,
the chief?
just you and I had this conversation, but I'm still hearing things from neighbors, and it's more on the northern end of the neighborhood. And I don't even know if it's hunter. People are hearing shots, whether they're fireworks, whether they're hunters, whether they're handguns. Is that something that should be called in? Because I can sit on my porch and I swear I hear shots in JF. And I'm not saying it's happening here, but is it worth the time to make that 911 call? And I guess I'm being asked more by my neighbors than myself.
Yes, it's absolutely worth it because, most people can't tell the difference between the two. And a lot of shootings are called in as fireworks. Yeah, it's absolutely worth the call. In your area, again, we're dealing with probably that Marshy area. If somebody is shooting at somebody else, we're eventually going to get that call. Very rarely do we have an active shooter. No, that's a bad, a shooting in progress where people are being shot at or getting hit that we don't know about it. So we may be dealing with hunters, but still, it's worth the call because we can get there, sit and wait, and maybe hear it ourselves.
Right? Is that if it was happening in JF, does the county go out? I mean, do you meet on both sides? They're the questions I'm being asked from people on 14th Street.
So as you protocol through a call, you call 911, you go through a protocol, they'll try to establish where it's coming from. And if they can't, they'll just revert back to the address. So if your address is in Van Dyke, we'll be dispatched. If we think it's coming from JF, we'll take a look. If we find something that we don't like, then we'll call the county.
Okay, thanks, sir.
This is Council President Ratchford. I would certainly encourage any of our residents, if you see something suspicious or you hear shots or you see someone trying to get in a car, just call 911 because we want to know about it, and we can't help you if you don't call the police. So just please call 911. Thank you. Any other questions for the chief?
Madam President, it's Mike Coron to the mayor. So Chief, I would say, that was an interesting exchange between you and Mr. Platt. If there are people that are hunting, I mean, and they could be local, but chances are if they're coming from someplace else, they have to park somewhere, right? So I guess it's also a matter of the public being diligent if they see cars parked and then later people emerging from someplace, maybe with camo on or whatever, carrying a firearm, etc. It just is helpful for all of us just to maybe remain diligent.
It's a good point. We do kind of know where they park, so it's usually the first spot we go.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anything else for the city administrator? Okay, at this point, council communications, anything council would like to share?
Councilman Platt here. I'd like to also congratulate and thank all the veterans for their service. And I'd also like to wish any Marines out there a happy birthday. It's their 245th birthday. So Semper Fi to all the Marines out there. I think we got 3 on the force, Chief.
Yes, we do. We have 3 former Marines.
No former Marines, you know that. Come on.
That's right. What, I forget the term, but yes.
Once a
3
Marine,
Marines.
always a Marine.
That's right. We'll delete
That's all I
that from the
have, Madam
minutes.
President.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Mayor?
Very good. Madam President, this came to me a little bit late, and I am willing just to submit it for the record if you like it, or I could read it. It's not on the agenda. I do have a proclamation for Small Business Saturday. I'm happy to do, I know it's going to be a long meeting tonight. It's very short, but if you'd prefer me just to submit it and dispense with the reading, we could do that.
It's your preference. Go ahead if you would like to read it.
All right, I'll go through it pretty quick. So this is a proclamation. There we go. Thank you, Ms. Bergmuller. Declaring November 28th, 2020 as Small Business Saturday, whereas the city of Newcastle celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy and community. According to the United States Small Business Administration, there are 31.7 million small businesses in the United States, representing 99.9% of all businesses with employees in the United States and responsible for 65.1 of net new jobs created over the past 20 years. And whereas small businesses employ 47.1% of the employees in the private sector in the United States, 62% of the small businesses, U.S. small businesses reported that they need to see consumer spending return to pre-COVID levels by the end of 2020 in order to stay in business. 65% of U.S. small business owners said it would be most helpful to their business to have their regulars return, start making purchases again, and 3/4 of U.S. consumers are currently looking for ways to shop small and support the community. And whereas 96% of consumers who shop small on Small Business Saturday agree that shopping at small, independently owned businesses supports their commitment to making purchases that have a positive social, economic, and environmental impact, and 97% of consumers who shopped on Small Business Saturday agree that small businesses are essential to their community. And whereas the city of Newcastle supports our local businesses that create jobs, boost our local economy, and preserve our neighborhoods, and whereas advocacy groups as well as public and private organizations across the country have endorsed the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday, now therefore be it hereby proclaimed that I, Michael J. Quaranta, Mayor of the City of Newcastle, do hereby proclaim November 28, 2020 as Small Business Saturday and urge the residents of our community and communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturday and throughout the year. Thank you very much. A couple of other notes. I was a little tardy this afternoon and sharing with all of you my notes. I believe I emailed it around just before the start of the meeting, so you do have it, but I'll summarize this quickly. Unfortunately, I've been on a couple of different calls today through my other professional endeavors here, and a couple times with the state, and sadly our COVID-19 numbers are rising. And so again, I just remind the public to please do everything they can to protect themselves, their family, friends, and neighbors. Good news is, I think that as many of you saw, that Pfizer Corporation announced yesterday that it had received very good results from its testing of over 43,000, I believe, samples, half of whom were placebo, half were had their test antidote, and they had a 90% success rate with that test. And hopefully we'll see some progress and perhaps FDA approval sometime soon. That would be a welcome outcome. But an uptick in the viruses was always predicted as the weather starts to get cold and more people spend time indoors. So I just ask people to please remain diligent. We had a very successful city and Arts Council sponsored event with Opera Delaware last Sunday afternoon. And let me just be clear. You know, the Arts Council again is a group of volunteers, but these are city events. approximately 150 or more people gathered, and a good number, dozens actually passed by probably on the path, and for the 35-40 minute performance. And I want to give a public shout out to Fee Price, who organized all of this on our behalf, and it was a really nice event. I credited the council for the weather on Sunday. It was absolutely perfect. We were very fortunate. It could have been 32 and blustery, but we were very fortunate, and just the feedback was really great. I did take the time, as I mentioned at the last meeting, that I am going to continue to talk with different leaders around the community about the idea of creating an open air kind of a permanent public structure for performing arts in our city. I think this is just another example of how we need something like that, and the benefit that it would create a great amenity for the park, for organizations like this and other nonprofits that we have in the city, or others we want to invite in the city. They have to rent all that stuff, rent the stage, rent all that equipment. So it'd be nice to have something that is architecturally nice and befitting of Battery Park in our city. And the feedback I got, very frankly, was very positive from the people I talked to that afternoon. Tomorrow's Veterans Day, as Mr. Platt had already mentioned, and I too would like to thank all of them who've served in the armed services and encourage everyone to do so. I'd also like to publicly thank all the men and women who ran for public office this year. As I look on my screen, many of us have done this, some more than others, and it's an arduous task, but it is appreciated. And let me also publicly then congratulate the winners. And we look forward to continuing our work with State Senator Nicole Poore and State Representatives Brown and Cook. I know that there's a point of discussion for Separation Day on the agenda. And let me just say that, if there is interest to have a committee participate again, I would welcome that opportunity. And so if there are people, and let me just say publicly, if people are interested in having a committee established or reestablished, I am happy to work with those volunteers. So they should just reach out and communicate to me. And I would like to get their ideas. I have.
Oh, you
You had a frozen screen here. Why don't we move on? And if the mayor has something and additional to comment later on, looks like we have a system issue. So at this point, I just wanted to bring up a couple of things.
Had a good conversation. Am I heard?
Mayor, you are back on. You were off.
Okay. I'll turn my camera off so I could probably get a better connection. At what point did I freeze?
When you were talking about forming a committee.
Okay. And so I'd like to ask for people if they would like to volunteer. I spoke with a couple of people over the last couple of days to gather ideas about including more public involvement in the barbecue, some ideas around perhaps amusement rides and the like for our young people. And I think we should be open to other ideas as we continually seek to make Separation Day a really terrific event. Also, the Thanksgiving holiday is coming up later in the month, and let me wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Everybody, please be safe. And finally, on a personal note, let me just mention, I know that several people in the public saw the sold sign out in front of 300 Delaware Street, and was wondering if I had, where I'd gone. And so I am now living in Shawtown, right near 9th and Young. So enjoying that, and I would ask that at some point, if you happen to be walking down Delaware Street and you see Ben and or Kristen or their young son, they are the new owners of 300 Delaware Street, and please don't hesitate to introduce yourself. And with that, I will yield back.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. This is Council President Ratchford.
Council President Ratchford, this is Councilman Russ Smith. I just wanted to mention once again about the the possibility of a permanent stage structure in the park. I just wanted to caution everybody to tread lightly because the comp plan survey had a question about such a thing there, and people were very protective about battery parks. I'm not saying it's not a good idea. I'm just saying let's be cautious and not be careful not to stir up a dust storm.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the mayor? Comments for the mayor? I have a couple of things I wanted to bring up. Bike Delaware is having a virtual conference on designing Delaware intersections for people. And they selected some intersections across the state for review and to pull in experts as far away as the Netherlands to look at them and see how they could be improved. Newcastle is very fortunate. We have 3 on the list, and this will certainly play into our transportation planning. The 3 intersections they'll be looking at are Harris Corner, also at 6th and 273, and 141 and 273. And that conference is free. You can sign on online. Also, I wanted to mention, since this is the giving season, you can contribute to the Newcastle Cares Fund to help people pay their electric and water bills. You can go on MSC website. And also, if you'd like to contribute to the Christmas party for kids, you can make a contribution through the Newcastle Police. So those are important things to keep in mind as many families are having tough times during the pandemic. So just keep that in mind. Next, we have public comments. At this point, I'm going to open it up for public comments. If you would like to comment, you would raise your hand. I ask that you can do that virtually via the application, or you can also do #9 on your phone. I would ask that you keep it to 3 minutes. And I'm going to ask Mr. Smith to time. And so at this point, I'll ask Ms. Bergman if there's anyone that would like to make a comment.
Yeah, I have Mr. Gross.
Okay, Mr. Gross, go ahead.
Good evening, Council and Madam President, esteemed Mayor. Real quickly, I guess, Mr. Barthel, is there or is there not anything mandating to I guess, bids on goods or services or contracts given by the city?
I think I answered that in that email that you sent to me, Mr. Gross, and the answer is there is nothing that mandates that we do that.
Okay, so for no goods, no services, no contracts, the city can just award contracts and purchase what they want without any accountability to the cost.
Didn't say that. No, you didn't say that there was no accountability. There's absolute accountability. And there's 5 people on this call who we're accountable to, including the mayor and 5,300 residents. So there is accountability.
Okay, but there
Next
is
question.
So, okay. Second, is there any changes as far as the purchasing of the trash cans? Is there anything done?
That's on council, the budget discussion.
Okay. Next, I guess as far as separation day, we've received $35,000 for the year of 2020, which would have been this year. We've already received $35,000 for next year, which is 2021. Am I correct?
Say that, we received $35,000 for last year.
Correct.
And we have been granted $35,000 for this year.
2021.
Correct.
So basically now we have a pool of $70,000, correct?
Well, we're going to be reviewing separation day numbers. And so I would just respectfully ask Mrs. Ratchford if perhaps we can table this conversation until that time. We'll be going through budget numbers. I have Kathy Walls on the call, and we can certainly address that in a little more detail. And I think it might be more appropriate at that time, if that's satisfactory to you, Mrs. Ratchford.
That would be fine. I think that's a better time to have the discussion.
But in a long short of it, I think we should bring separation back to be run by a city group, as our mayor suggested, maybe bring back committees and make it back as our own so we can take pride in it. And last but not least, I really hate to see fines or basically fines on anything be made into a revenue stream by raising the fees, the fines, so that it's basically not just hurting people, but also making a fake revenue stream that could fall out at any time. And certainly, as our council could probably say, it's extremely treading on thin ice when you try and dictate what people should do, how they should do their properties. And
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Gross. We appreciate that. We'll be talking more about that topic at the next meeting. Is there anyone else that would like to comment?
I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, well, thank you. Then we will go on to the next agenda item. And this is council discussion and possible action on city operations budget or recovery due to COVID-19. As the mayor mentioned, things are not going in the right direction in the state. We're on the quarantine list again. We all need to certainly try to be safe, especially during these winter months when it's much more difficult. So at this point, I'll ask the city administrator to talk about what we're doing from a city perspective.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. Well, two items in particular. One, and I know this has been a discussion of council in the past in regard to the fencing around the playgrounds. We are in a position where, and have been for some time, where we go and we put the fences up and the residents take it down. And we've had instances where we've had residents call the police, which has been great. You know, hey, your guys were just up there putting up the fence, and they've called and said, the kids, they're taking them down. I've had conversations with the mayor about this. Certainly we can continue to go that way. But I think maybe council might want to revisit, perhaps just at this point, putting up signs as we go into the winter, which the state has recommended. Maybe Mr. Lasko can talk about the liability aspect and perspective of that. And again, as council has discussed, we really don't have the capability to clean those on a very regular basis. But just to share with you, we've been experiencing a lot of that. I mean, it's been going on now for some time. And I think council, should consider maybe just going a different route at this point. Or if that's what you want us to continue doing, we'll continue to put up the fencing, but with the understanding, so that you all have the understanding that there are residents in most of these parks who are taking them down.
Madam President, if I could just add 30 seconds, I would say this. The evidence of kids using the playground equipment is pretty much there. We put the stuff up and it comes down, they use it, and we've not had incidents of COVID. So quite truthfully, my own view would be to go ahead and take the snow fencing away, post a sign, use it at your own risk, call it a day. I think the facts over the last 8 months kind of speak for themselves.
Madam President, Councilman Platt here. I have to echo what the mayor's saying. I think everybody knows I do a lot of walking. I was up at it, County Park, Tallyville, at the Tallyville Library. I take my dog to a dog park, playground, soccer fields, softball fields, all open. All the porta potties open. Actually, there were no signs at your own risk to do whatever. And I think the last time council voted on this, the recommendation was that if it can't be cleaned by the owners, that it's up to the people using it to clean it. And I think that was in one of the handout, Madam President, that you actually put out.
I concur with Councilperson Platt and Mayor Caranta. That is something I mentioned before. It's within the state guidelines just to post signage and use at your own risk.
Madam President, may I make a motion that we open up the city playgrounds?
Do I have a second?
Second,
Okay, at this point, we're gonna, let's make sure we understand the motion. Are we gonna open them up? Or, the state ones are all still closed. Are we going to close them, but just have a sign saying they're closed? So I just want to understand the motion before we vote on it.
I stand by my motion. We open them up, take the fencing down. If you want to post signage, go at your own risk, clean at your own risk. I'm okay with that, but I say we take the snow fencing down and open the playground. I bet you Mr. Barthel could probably give us a number, and a big number in labor of guys going out, putting the fencing up, taking it down, putting it up, taking it down. So
Right.
I'll stick with that motion if Ms. Leary will still second it.
still second.
And then I have one other question, but some discussion before we vote. Certainly having our employees run around, putting the snow fencing back up sounds pretty counterproductive. Mr. Lasco, do we need to post anything?
It's not a matter of do you have to, it's a council decision on if you wish to. I would recommend it. I mean, generally speaking, we've got sovereign immunity, but I think it's fair to put the public on risk that it's still a pandemic situation. In the winter months, it's going to be worse, and the numbers are increasing. So I think it's the least we can do to put people on notice. Whether you fence it, whether you sign it, people are going to still use them as you've experienced. But I think a sign is at least a last-ditch effort to get people to act reasonably.
Councilman Platt, one more thing. Everything I've been reading, and they're actually recommending, you don't do holidays inside anymore because that's where the COVID's being spread, is inside, even amongst families. So let's get them outside and let them play, do whatever.
Councilperson Larry, on one of the handouts in our booklet the last month or two, there was specific wording what the sign should say, or suggested wording that the sign should say. And I suggest that we take a look at that, see what it says, and that's what our sign should say.
Okay.
Because that came from the state, so.
Okay, so it's a motion to open them up with appropriate signage.
Correct. Use at your own risk.
Okay, all those in favor indicate saying aye.
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 Oh,
Opposed? Okay, motion is passed. Should certainly reduce some time on the staff. Okay, any other COVID issues?
Yes, Madam President, just an update on where we are with the facility reviews. They were finished, they were completed. I have a conversation, or I have a meeting, I'm sorry, tomorrow with Layla Hamroon. As you all know, I've been working with her. We put in the HVAC filters. That's already been done. So I'm anticipating that in our conversation tomorrow, we will go ahead and have recommendations for what we can do at the facilities in terms of, shielding, that type of thing. And anticipate going forward and ordering those and having those in and utilizing the CARES funds before they're no longer available before the end of December.
Any questions for the city administrator? Okay, let's move on. The next item is second reading of ordinance number 529, an ordinance to amend and restate chapter 28 of the city code entitled Emergency Management. At this point, I would ask that we have a motion to dispense with the second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor of dispensing with the second reading indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so we are going to dispense with the second reading. We did have a special meeting about this topic recently. At this point, we have a motion, discussion, and vote on the ordinance. At this point, I'll have a motion and then a second, and then we'll have discussion with an update from Mr. Lasco on some of the changes that came from the special meeting, and I think there was one before that. So to have a motion to vote on ordinance, to have a motion, discussion, and vote on ordinance 20.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
A second from Mr. Smith. Okay, at this point, Mr. Lasco, would you review the changes that were made to the posted ordinance?
Yes, Madam President, thank you. enclosed with your council packet, I believe, is a red line version of the ordinance where you can see the actual changes I made. And most of these were based on suggestions made by council persons that were discussed at the most recent workshop meeting. The first is a change in the definition of curfew to exempt personnel, not just emergency personnel that are city officials, but also any other persons officially designated to discharge duties under federal or state law. The second change was a suggestion, I believe, by Ms. Souter, and this is in section 28-4B, where we assembled the emergency management team to include the president of city council. And the added language is, if unavailable, the most senior member of council who is available would then serve on the emergency management team. And later on in that section, Ms. Souter had also suggested that if other members of the team were not available, the next person in line of succession would serve. I didn't use the precise language that Ms. Souter had provided because, for example, with the city administrator, there really is no other next person in the line of succession. Same thing with the building official or the solicitor, for example. So I simply use the next in line for that office, or if none, such other persons serving in similar capacities as the mayor may designate. So for just as an example, Ms. Walls might serve in the city administrator's stead if the CA weren't available, just an example. The next change was suggested by the council president. It's in section 28-5, item I, and we were just talking about parks and temporary. These are the list of authorities that the mayor has. And one of them, it was to temporarily close streets, alleys, and public throughways. And the council president had suggested that we not just say close, but also restrict usage or access, and not just to streets, alleys, and public throughways, but also to parks, public property, and public facilities, which I thought was a good add as well. I made a couple of other changes here that I thought focused things in a little better. One is in section 28-50, which is kind of the catch-all of the list of authorities, where we say the mayor would have other authorities as established in the emergency management plan, and I added or required by state or federal authorities, as well as any other authorities conferred by city council. And then in section 28-8, we already had a provision in here that required the mayor to inform council of any declaration of an emergency or the contents of any emergency management plan. I just added the word promptly based on some comments at the workshop we had recently, so that the impetus is on the mayor and the emergency management team to keep council informed and keep them informed quickly. And then the last change that struck me as I was going through this one last time is in 28-8C, where it talks about if there is the council terminates a declaration and the mayor has to then terminate the emergency or curtail any of his authorities, it has to be disseminated immediately to the public by the city website or news media. And it struck me that where there may not be a city website or news media, so I said by other available means as well. It might just be posting at town hall, or it's flyers that are handed out or something along those lines. But again, just a means of getting the word out if the more conventional website or news media aren't in operation. And I think that's the sum and substance of the changes that I had made since the workshop.
Questions or comments?
Wasco, Councilman Platt here. On the last section, you talked about 28-8C. Does the mayor have veto power over council?
Does the mayor have, not in this instance, it's just the opposite. The mayor declares the state of emergency, implements some authorities, and it's council that can inform the mayor that they have overruled him on a line item veto basis. So it could be specific authorities that are vetoed, or it could be the entire state of emergency that is canceled.
Okay, I mean, I'm just a novice at this, and I know the mayor has veto power, and I just want to know where that starts and stops.
Now, this is, mayor has veto power over an ordinance, which can be overridden by a supermajority vote of council. But we're not talking about an ordinance here. We're talking about a declaration of state of emergency. And in that instance, it takes 3 votes of council to strike down any of the authorities that the mayor has implemented or to terminate the state of emergency.
And once again, being a novice, when I see ordinance number 529, wouldn't that mean we're talking about an ordinance?
Well, the ordinance is this is the chapter we're talking
You're
about.
correct.
So if council adopts this ordinance, yes, the mayor can veto it. But once this ordinance is in place, and assuming it's not been vetoed, then it's dealing with state of emergency circumstances. We're not talking about
Only.
passing additional ordinances.
Okay, thanks for the explanation.
You got it.
Any other questions or comments at this point? I'm gonna call for a vote then on ordinance 529 to amend and restate chapter 28 of the city code entitled Emergency Management. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye,
Is that a nay?
nay.
Okay, so the ordinance has passed 4-1. It will go on to the for the signature process to the mayor. Next topic is budget discussion and possible action, but not limited to allocation of funds for various city needs, grants, and other expenditures. And a motion discussion and vote on resolution 2020-28. And this would be a resolution amending fiscal year 2021 budget for the above mentioned reasons. At this point, I would say we start the discussion. We may need to go to some further agenda items to get some information before we actually go into the motion discussion and vote on the resolution, because it's an iterative process. At this point, I'm going to ask the city administrator and staff to walk us through their recommendations. Why do you want to say one thing? Reason we're doing this is we pass a budget every year, and sometimes we make changes here and there if we, as we make adjustments through the year. But in this particular year, we were very, very conservative on our projections for revenues. And now that we have 5 months of experience, we are going to have, I guess, closer to a normal year of revenues. And so we're going to revisit some of the needs that we have as a city and consider passage of an amended budget. So that's why we're in this process. We could also in the future do another budget amendment, but if we want to just take care of the things we know we need to address this evening. So I'll ask the city administrator to proceed.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. Everybody should have in their packet a summary of the fiscal year 21 budget amendments, which is basically a recap of what we discussed at the special budget meeting that we had last month. And as you can see, it talks the numbers, the property tax is up 325 over projections. Property tax transfers are up 47.5. The Rivertown ride, we subtracted 1,500 because obviously there was no ride. We did get the Delmarva reimbursement, or I'm sorry, the way it was scheduled. We did get the Delmarva reimbursement that I thought was what you were talking about earlier in the meeting. You can see, however, that was just a plus and minus for the restricted carry forward, which Kathy put in the summary, the revenue summary, and of course the 60,000 for the CARES reimbursement. So that was a $431,000 increase over what our budget projections were or are, pretty much so far. The expenses which we talked about was the cameras. You can see what I did was some of the things that were changed. I highlighted in red the vehicles for public safety. I believe had 30,000. We had 30 for that and 20 for the public services. It's actually 42,056 for the police vehicles and 12,670 for the public service, the 2 electrical vehicles. So it basically had an increase, a net increase in that category of about $5,000 over where we were last month. But everything else, the yard waste, the street repairs, you can read through it. The storm drainage, you'll see, I highlighted that in 29,100. What I did was I took that number and put that at the bottom of the summary. I think that that's something obviously council's going to want to consider, whether or not you want to apply for that FEMA grant. I know Dave Athey is on this call. So if you have any questions specific to that, he's here to answer that. We moved the trash cans down, excuse me, from expenses that we were recommending. I basically moved those down to a discussion for council, which it would be anyway, but I mean more specific to council's purview. I will tell you that we did get notification that the trustees have agreed to spend $5,000, the $5,000 that council requested for trash cans. And then of course you have the 2,800 from the partnership. But anyway, so that's why the difference in the number for the storm drainage. And then I added one other line item, which is an HR assessment. Cost of that is $1,850, which, basically, I think we need to look at our activities within HR, make sure we're doing things appropriately, kind of a checks and balance of where we are within, within that category, if you will. And the cost to do that, to go outside to do that, is $1,850. The additional monies that we have at the bottom of the page, as you can see, in addition to the trash cans and the grant, feasibility study, which is still being discussed, obviously, by council, for $15,000 to go to the next stage. Wayfinding signs, which I believe Mr. Smith requested as part of this discussion. And then I have nonprofit contributions. And so, as you can see, obviously, that's something that council is going to want to discuss. And you have the current requests in your packet for, as requested, the changes, if any, from the Historical Society, from the library, and from the Senior Center.
Bill, I never did find the page that you were on.
I can't hear you.
I never did find the page that you were on.
I think Kim dropped this off to you early or later late this afternoon. Kim, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, got my mail early this morning. Didn't go back. I'll be right back.
Okay,
I can put it up on the screen.
That's all right.
that probably would be helpful. I do have, I think this point, let's go for a clarification, and I do want to get some more information on the, I had a question, this is Council President Ratchford, on the property tax current, looking at our October budget in terms of the revenue. It's saying that we had 319,000 excess. Did you add in some additional dollars that came in after October 31st?
Kathy? Is Kathy still on this call?
Okay.
Um,
Mail comes either 10 o'clock or 6 o'clock. It's been coming at 10.
Okay, the 325, Kathy put that in there, and I believe that was in additional.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
I'm sorry, I got kicked out of the meeting, and now I'm just, I guess, a bystander. But so I couldn't hear what you were asking me about.
The property tax current, the 325. It's an additional after.
There's maybe $500 additional property tax since this report, since our last meeting. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, but you have 325 there, and on our October report, it's 319.
No, we just increased the budget.
No, the budget is increased by 325.
325, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that explains it. So it's not what we have collected.
No, the 325 is just the increase above the budget that we approved, where we should take it to an additional 325 added to that budget.
Okay,
Right.
that's helpful. And on that line, the tax penalties and delinquent tax collection, those are still showing to be about $13,000 under budget. So do we need to make any adjustments for those, or you expect those to come in?
We're still planning on those budget lines to come around what the budget was predicted. We're not expecting them to be under.
Okay. Okay, anyone else have any other questions on the revenues? How they were calculated? Okay, then any questions on the list of expenses?
Suzanne Souter, I have one question. For the pruning and tree planting, when we discussed it the last time, we added $5,000. I think that brings it to a total of 10 because we had given them 5 for general maintenance, and this would allow for some new planting. We were going to have a report from the Tree Advisory Commission, and I understand that's been postponed until next month because we had so many things on the agenda this month. Are we going to wait for input from them to make a final decision, or if we approve this tonight and give them the extra 5,000 now, if it seems to be warranted, would we be able to add more later, or do we have to do another whole amended budget?
Council President Retcher, I believe that 10 was the recommended amount for the budget, but we cut it back to 5. Is that correct?
I believe so, from the budget in June.
Yes, correct.
Yes, I believe that is correct.
So we're
That's right, it was,
storing.
it was originally 5. That's right, it was originally 5, and then we added back 5.
That would not preclude us at some future date adding back more money for trees.
Is this where we discuss our nonprofit contributions, or we're not there yet?
I think if there are no other questions on the expense, I had one more question and then let's move, but that was Rivertown Rides. Where's the $2,500 from on the expense side?
That's to show the actual. We had budgeted 2,500 and we actually spent 5,000. So we have to add 25 to that budget line.
But they brought in $5,000 in donations. We did the budget based on not knowing what was gonna, not knowing how that event, based on, I guess, the previous event. And so they went out and they pulled in $5,000 from the refinery. And I guess we had budgeted 2,500 back in June, not really knowing what the event would be.
Yeah.
And so it ended up being 5,000. They brought it in, and that's what paid for it. But we had to show it. I mean, we got the revenue for it. We budgeted 25, and we had to show the additional cost. But it was offset by.
So it's basically a zero gain.
Correct.
The
That's
5,
correct.
okay.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. So if there are no other questions on the expense side, let's go down to, go ahead, Mr.
Just
Platt.
one quick one. You did say electric cars for the inspectors or the new cars. Is that going to be through budget, or are we going to lease them? We going to buy them? I know last time you talked about buying from budget.
Through enterprise.
Or enterprise, I'm
Through
sorry.
enterprise, correct. Those are the folks that we've been working with. We ran the numbers through them, and it basically, that turns out to be a 5-year lease. And it's a 5-year lease for the two electric cars and the 4 police vehicles.
That's excellent.
Yeah, and now, just not to get too deep into the weeds, obviously with, if in 4 years we decide those police vehicles might be at a point that we need to trade them in, certainly we have the option to do that. If after 5 years we have 40, 50,000 miles on those 2 electric cars, we may decide that, okay, we don't have to trade them in. So there is flexibility built into it. But by going through the fleet management group, this allows us to get rid of the Dodges. And the chief's going to smile. I know the chief's smiling. I can see it behind that beard. The chief is happy. We're going to get rid of those 4 Dodges that we're having problems with. And we get to finally replace those other 2 really outdated vehicles for, Jeff and for Jeff.
That's excellent. Excellent work.
Okay, that's great. And so no other questions on the expense. We're going to go to the section below, which has trash cans, grants, feasibility, wayfinding signs, and nonprofit contributions.
So the grant
clear?
here, it's 33,000. Can you remind me of that, please?
Yeah, Mr. Athey, could you explain why we would want to spend 33,000? The FEMA grant, and is a matching contribution that it's kind of part of our ongoing efforts to address resiliency issues in terms of flooding, sea level rise.
Yeah,
extreme
good.
storms. So if you could address that, Mr. Athey, it'd be appreciated.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. Council President Radford more or less just hit the nail on the head. This is a project that if you don't, I could frame it the opposite way. If you don't provide the grant match, you're losing $1,000 shy of $100,000 from funding. And as again, Ms. Radford said, this just kind of continues to move that ball forward on the city's overall resiliency. So, you know, I understand budget constraints and fiscal prudence, but you know, frankly, that would be kind of tough to watch that that FEMA money go away if the match isn't provided. But you know, you all have to make your decisions.
I want to make one comment. I get people ask me all the time, well, what are you doing about you know, dikes or fixing the, you know, the areas that aren't protected? And to do that, we would need a very solid plan. Right now, our prior work has been done on, you know, estimates, not actual elevations. And that's been one of the things we think we need to actually come up with a firm plan. At some point in the future, we're probably going to have to go after millions of dollars to actually solve the problems and prepare us, you know, to address these issues. So when you go for those types of projects, you can't go in and say, guess what? I think it's 10 feet. I mean, you know, so therefore you need to justify and design accordingly. So in my view, based on what we've been looking at from a resilience standpoint, this money is well worth the matching funds to get to the rest of the FEMA grant. And if we don't do it now, it may not come back up. So those are my thoughts. So other comments from Mr. Athey or Mr. Bergstrom or council?
Who's preparing the plan?
Well, actually, I could address that. I know I did talk with Jeff earlier. It's not a plan per se. It's actually a series of actions. A good share of it, probably roughly half of it, is just good old-fashioned surveying, as Ms. Radford said a moment ago. And thank you for elaborating on my answer. You were indeed correct that most of the studies that have been done to date were based on best available information, which is a little bit sketchy to be basing some pretty major decisions on. So a lion's share of the work would be just, again, good old-fashioned surveying of literally several hundred homes and yards to get those elevations. Again, I know, looks like Jeff is on the phone. He and I spoke, you know, options of, you know, frankly, we have surveyors, of course, but there are other options as well. But anyway, the next phase of that would be to take all that surveying data and plug it back into some of the models that have been created. Frankly, we would hope that we would do that work. We've already done some of that work under a separate agreement with DENREC. And I think we shared that information with Mr. Barthel sometime in the past, but just kind of continuing to go down, you know, a lot of the analyses that have already been done.
Tracy, my second question might be, I know flood maps are federal, but would this go and hurt the city in any way in putting more area into the flood zone? Because I know right now there's 2 houses in Van Dyke that people may not want to buy because it costs anywhere between $2,200 and $4,000 a year for flood insurance. Would that change anything, or would it help us? Would it have any impact either way on it?
It would have no impact either way. We're actually looking more into the future. Again, as Ms. Ratchford said, if, options include of raising of the dikes or potential flood-proofing activities on some of the structures, that's kind of the crossroads that sooner or later the city will be at. But we are not going to be changing the floodplain. FEMA is the only agency that could do that, and there's an official application process, things along those lines. So the answer to your question is no, we would not be either getting more people in the floodplain or excluding people. That's not the focus of what this work would do.
Okay.
I'm sorry, not directly. That doesn't mean that the data couldn't be used by the city or frankly homeowners as a follow-up, but that is not what this work is intended to do.
Okay.
Mr. Bergman, I think it's a really good question, Mr. Platt. I think Mr. Burrs could maybe talk about that. I mean, there have been homeowners who actually took exception to the flood wraps and did some surveys and then came back and find out, some change of their floodplain status. Could you address that? You're on mute.
Sorry. Self-defense. We can look at one that's on the agenda this evening, 46 West 3rd Street, that is showed on the flood map as being in the floodplain for years. And it's entirely not within the floodplain. We had to get the flood map amended. Some of the people will benefit probably pretty greatly because they'll realize that their elevation certificates might save them a bunch of money. A lot of people just give up and pay what their insurance agent tells them. And that is going to always be the highest rate. You have to fight your way down for to a better rate in the flood insurance process. Now, the whole schema for setting flood insurance rates is going to change in the next few years, but right now this could have a tremendously positive effect on a number of people who aren't paying much attention to their flood insurance rates.
So Mr. Bergstrom, let me clarify. So this study could help some of those homeowners in terms of.
It could help them if they're in a spot where they didn't get a flood elevation certificate and are paying just the default highest rate. It might help them get to a lower rate.
If I can clarify that, because Jeff and I might be sounding like we're saying two different things, but there would have to be a second step on somebody's part to do what Jeff is now implying could be done with some of the data. Maybe I just need to clarify that we would not, or whoever the surveyor is,
right?
That is not the intent of the grant, and I'm not even sure that FEMA would give you a grant to provide data to change their flood maps. That just seems kind of like a circular. So the data will exist. It'll be in the public arena, but how it gets used in the future would have to be a second. It would have to be a second step, if you will.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or I guess we does the staff have a recommendation on trash cans? Like how many do we need?
Well, we discussed the fact the last meeting that there were 16 cans downtown primarily, and in speaking, of course, Ms. Souter suggested whether or not we could, revitalize any of them. And I had George take a look at them. Number one, I guess Mrs. Ratchford, you asked if it was necessary to have all 16, and we certainly conclude that it is. George basically feels that out of those 16, 4 of them may be, repairable. And then you have the other 12. But I guess the question then is, in terms of what you decide upon as far as, there's a variance in terms of cost. Obviously, the cost that we received in the research done by the partnership was, whatever it was, $1,200-1,300. I guess they could buy 2 with shipping or 3 with shipping. We researched additional cans. So I guess the question is, what you want to spend, number one. And I guess to answer your question, you could essentially use 16 new ones. but you could get away with 12 at this point. I mean, you can get away with less at this point, depending, of course, what you want to spend.
So right now, we have, as you mentioned, 5,000 from the trust,
Mhm,
2,800 from the partnership, and we're
mhm.
looking at the 8,200 here, which would be $16,000. And we need to probably replace at least 12. Hopefully those 4 would work.
Mhm.
I think that's just a go ahead on it. I think we should probably also look at the feasibility. I'm not really sure, from what I've seen on research, that the dual cans that have recycling on one side and regular trash on the other, those are, we usually run somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000 each. I'm not sure that's going to be feasible. So I'm for, this is long overdue. And if we don't spend all the 16, then great, we have some left over to be applied somewhere else that needs something.
Well, and just on that note, if I may, Madam President, just to say to council that we can still utilize these funds in terms of balancing, providing a resolution with a new updated balanced budget. But you don't necessarily have to spend all of the existing surplus of 87,824. So in other words, we can say, okay, let's say you said we're going to spend 67,824, that other 20,000 would go into a reserve account. So I guess, to answer, I mean, Mrs. Leary's correct. Whether you decided you wanted to spend it all now, you wanted to surplus it, you wanted to surplus, put into a reserve account, additional monies if you don't spend the full 87, but that's up to council.
Yeah, but this is President Retro. I don't think we ought to allocate all the money. We're only 5 months into the year. We have a lot of needs. I think we're just trying to see whether we want to allocate some of these funds. And so we talked some about trash cans, and it would have to be a little more research. I mean, obviously you didn't need all 8,000. You could, go, but we clearly need trash cans. You've looked at the trash cans. They look terrible. Most of them can't be repaired. And to me, that's part of just finishing out Delaware Street. It's going to look really nice. And I hate to think we have ugly trash cans out there. So,
Councilman Platt here. Why don't we start on Delaware Street? Madam President, I think that's a great idea. Replace the ones that we have on Delaware Street, see how they work, and then go from there. And then, like Mr. Barthel said, put the rest of the money in restricted funds, and we can move from there. I mean, that way, come springtime, Delaware Street's all together. It's paved. We have the trash cans out. We have our logo on the cans. Everything looks nice. We go from there.
I think the trash cans, that the locations are pretty much all on Delaware, except for if you count like a couple on Dewey Park, a couple on the Green. Then there's one by the bus stop right off. So they're either right on Delaware or right off Delaware, the existing trash cans.
Is there any way, I mean, the trash cans that are on the Green estate property, is there any way to get any funds from the state for that, or is that shooting in the dark?
Madam President.
Mr. Mayor has a
So it's a good question, Councilwoman Leary. I would have that conversation with DENREC. I would also find out if there are other municipalities that are prepared to make a similar purchase. And I don't know if Mr. Barthel has had the chance to do that, but I know he's had those kinds of conversations on other kinds of things. And maybe by scale, it might be, I don't know if it's possible to combine with others, but if somebody else is buying 25 and you're buying 10 or 16, somehow the per unit price goes down. So that would, there might be an opportunity there.
Okay.
But there could be some DENREC funds available for those kinds of things. It would be a shame to at least not have, my own 2 cents of this would be maybe purchase fewer, but it would be a shame to have a few that weren't set up such to receive waste and recycling separately. That would be too bad.
This is Council President. I agree. I think we should have at least several that have that option. So I think at this point, if we could just approve the budget, then we can come back with more specific recommendations in terms of whether we can get some cost savings. It's if we basically, depending on how much they cost, we may be able to buy 12 of them. So I think we'd have to come back with detailed recommendations. So at this point, I guess it's just a matter of decision on $8,200. On the feasibility study, that is Mr. Barthel, would you talk about that a little, about what the next step would be and whether
Sure, Madam President. What I did, first of all, if you recall at the last council meeting when this was discussed, Ms. Souter asked if I could put together some sort of number or estimate guess about actual savings if you were to go ahead and do that. So what I did was, and I spoke to Pam about it, obviously, just to kind of get an idea of where we have, duplication, and obviously with our copier, with our services, gas and electric, pest control, security, cleaning services. We looked at that, and the easiest way, quite frankly, to do this is just to say, okay, out of those expenses, we're going to cut our expenses in half. And again, without getting much more specific than that, because I don't have a whole lot more information than that, but I would say that we would look at that at about 50%. Now, the phone lines we looked at, and even if we combine facilities, we're looking at a savings of about 600. So you take the other things I mentioned, copier, electric, gas, et cetera, and insurance, we're looking at an annual total savings of about a little over $15,000. And then if I take the 7540 plus the 600 for the, which divided by 2 is 7540, and the 600 for the phone lines, that gives us an annual savings of about $8,140. Now, the other thing I did was we agreed that for the first 5 years of having this new facility, we probably can reduce our estimated budget for building repairs, basically zero that out. So what I did was I made the assumption that for the first 5 years, we'll zero that out. For years 5, so that would be years 1 to 5. For years 6 to 10, I figured, okay, our building repairs are going to go up. So we subtracted $2,500, making that cost, $2,500 each, or $5,000. And then in years from 11 to 30, I said another $2,500 each, assuming obviously the building's a little older, we would have additional repairs. So long story short, what I did was the total savings for those 30 years would be about $281,700, or an average of about $9,390 a year. Now, I have a discussion with council, and I believe that by relocating over to this new facility, you most likely, and I've had the discussion about the need for a public works director. I think it's easier to manage. It would be much easier for the city administrator to manage as the public works director, which is basically what I'm doing now. I think that position, you may not have to hire a public works director if we're all located together. So I estimated, again, in this year, if you're talking about salary and benefits, I called that about $90,000 a year. So again, what I'm projecting, if you will, would be roughly $99,390 per year in savings if you were to go into this facility. And I know that was part of, your concern, Ms. Souter. Now, if the council president, if you would like, I did run a pricing scenario about if we were to go with one of the concepts and what that would do to the overall pricing. And if you want, I'll take you through that, unless you feel that's enough information at this point. The next step, of course, would be, to your question, would be to allocate $15,000 along with MSC to go to the next step with GMB, which two things on that note. Now, they do mention in their proposal, as part of going into the architectural schematic design phase, which would be for the $15,000, they do mention that they would be able to prepare an updated estimate of probable construction cost for the selected concept. So right now, so they would basically be they would be fine tuning the the construction cost to do this. Obviously, with concept A, they estimated at this point it would be $10,268,493. I believe, as does Pam in the conversations we had, that number is going to come in somewhere between 7 million and 10 million. And of course, council could always say, we're just going to allocate 7 million for this project or whatever to do that. So again, Madam President, to your question, the next step is to agree to the 15,000 and then take it back to the folks at GMB. Actually agree to the 15 and then choose a concept. Okay, you're going to have to choose a concept if you recall, whether or not we're going to go out and purchase whatever the agreement is going to be, you have to decide on a concept in order for them to fine tune the whole thing. So you could set that $15,000 aside and continue your discussions about the concepts that you may or may not want to pursue. And then you'd have that money available, when you're ready to pull the trigger and fine tune what their recommendations are. That made perfect sense to me, but I don't know if I did a lot of talking there.
And this is Council President. I think what the city administrator, make sure I could restate it, is that we don't have to, we could put it on the list, but we don't have to spend it, because I would not be comfortable with spending at this point until I understand exactly what we're moving forward on, because there were certainly concerns, about the concept plan and what we would get in terms of, maybe we could do things over time. Now, of course, we are talking also a reminder for everyone, if it's $7 million, it's actually $3.5 million for the city, because MSC picks up theoretically one half, is something we could do over time. We could focus on the administrative building. We could focus on the council chamber / multi-purpose big facility. So I think that I wouldn't want to make a decision tonight whether to go to the next. I think we have to have a lot more discussion, but whether to just hold on to the 15,000 as a potential and have a future discussion.
We just hold on to it and set it aside. Yeah, there's no.
That's correct. So,
Agreed.
and okay, so that then the wayfinding signs, Mr. Smith, do you want to talk about that?
No, I don't. I really don't. I will. Everybody saw what the wayside plan was. It was done according to the branding system that council approved. And what it was doing was carrying on the system that was already going forward. What happened is we had a wayfinding system being implemented, and we ran out of money, or somebody did, before it was totally implemented. And between the time that that was done, we moved into a new branding system. So the wayside system had to be brought into the new branding system. So that's all that was being done. It was conversion of the old system into the new branding system. And it's not a whole lot different than what was prepared, I don't know, Linda, 5-6 years ago, maybe more than that. So actually it was just sliding into the old system into a new system. $1,000 is dirt cheap.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for working so hard on it. It's just basically, it's better direction so people don't get lost.
So people can find their way to visitor information, find their way to the city pier, find their way to parking, just get around town. For buses to find their way to bus parking, it's a very, very practical system. And, as I said, it was already being implemented. It was because of lack of funds. And then there was a change in what it should look like. So I went ahead and went forward with a designer, the original designer, to change the system to be in line with the new branding system. So that's all there is to it.
It's a no-brainer.
I agree. Then on nonprofit contributions, let's have some discussion about what should we do mid-year. What are people's, based on what we know from how the nonprofits are operating? I will say many of them have been very creative in terms of doing virtual things, going after other grants. So we're really under this discussion, really talking about Historical Society, Library, and Senior Center.
And their requests total 22,000.
Has there been any change in the requests from what we were looking at the beginning of the fiscal year?
I don't think, in reading these, I don't think any of them have changed the amount that they're asking for.
Okay, I thought there was some talk of going back to them and saying, now that we're just talking about a half year, what are your needs?
We did, that's in the thing, and they didn't change.
Oh, okay, they didn't change. Okay.
They just changed the date.
Oh, okay.
Councilman Smith, that's in your pack. Those letters should be in your packet.
I saw these letters in here. I didn't know whether
Right.
they were.
And Suzanne Satterfield, they do mention different things that they're doing, wanting to do with the money under the new circumstances.
Well, then the senior center, the letter is dated March 11th, 2020.
Right, they don't
Correct.
seem to have updated it very much, and they're still talking about wellness programs, but are they having people come into the building? Not to my knowledge.
I don't know. I didn't see, couldn't tell from the, yeah, so that was a discussion last time.
This is also something we could postpone if we thought, maybe to January or something. By then we'll know where we are. We'll be over 6 months into the year.
Could we award some money and not all of it? Because for instance, the Historic Society is open now 3 days a week and their plan is to continue that. And in spite of the fact that our museums aren't open, they've actually had a lot of visitors, and that will give them the opportunity for some programming.
We could certainly do that, do a partial grant. And I do believe the Senior Center is also open on limited hours, like 10 to 2.
And the library mentioned some services that they're providing to people, like making copies for people and that sort of thing, which is, of course, is toner and paper, and they charge for, I think it's more than 10 copies or pages of printing for people who don't have computer access at home, basically, I guess, or don't have a printer at any rate. So I agree, maybe we could give some of the money now and then see how things stand in another couple of months.
And what money would we give now, this council president? What recommendations do we have? At this point, I think someone mentioned from these group, the requests are $22,000, 5,000 from the Senior Center, 7 from the library, and 10 from the Historical Society. Do we know how much we gave them last year? Do we have that information?
It's on, it was on a couple of them, the library, either the library or the Senior Center had it on the top of what they previously received. I would recommend right now we could, if we're going to review this again in February or I'm not sure what the month it was, could we award 50% right now? That would be 11,000. And it would be just basically half. Senior Center would be 2,500. The Historic Society would be 5, and the library would be 35. And then we look at it again.
Have never given the full amount of what they requested, ever, since I sat on this council.
That is correct, and we're not giving them the full amount now. And
Well, if you give them 5 now, 5 later, that's 10,000. If you give
excuse me, I didn't say give them 5 later. I said give 50% now, and we reassess it again when we do it in January, February, whatever.
On the screen, I'll call everyone's attention to what we gave prior years. If you could see the contributions that we gave everyone. It's Historical Society, 18, 19, 20, 5,000, 3,303. Senior Center for same years, 3,000, 3,333. Library, 2,500, 333, and then 3. And then also we made a contribution to Goodwill of 9,000 last year.
Yeah, it seems like, Goodwill is the only one working full steam.
And we
Um,
cut them out.
Well, I didn't see them in the package and I wondered about that. But
We have
they're-
not cut them out. No, no one's cut them out. It's just at this point, these were the three in our packet.
That's just an observation. Everybody else has had to cut back operations. I think we expect Goodwill to be at full strength all the time. So,
And I, you know, this could be a question too. How much money are they getting from the CARES Act?
good question.
No, I mean, talking to all the groups.
I know Historical Society is getting
'Cause
some.
even though the cities continued to operate and we still continued to collect taxes and we still paid our people, we got money from the CARES Act. So, and I know a certain amount had to go to that to protect the salaries and so forth, so on. I understand it's a very complicated bill. But, you know, is the library getting anything from the CARES Act or from the county?
Bill,
Is the Historic Society?
I don't believe, go ahead, I'm sorry.
that's okay. I see you shaking your head no, so.
I don't, well, I don't believe so. I believe it was earmarked for municipalities. Now, the question, and the chief's on from Goodwill or Timmy Moore, I believe there were monies available for CARES for the fire departments and the rescue, but I don't believe that CARES money was meant, again, I don't believe it was. It could have been, but I don't believe it was for, you know, they've got other, you know.
The Historical Society did get some CARES money to cover salaries. I don't know how much.
Nonprofits was included in the CARES.
Yeah, but it was different. I believe it was, like you say, it was
Because I
more for
know
like salary
private
for
schools
things, I
receive money.
believe. But this one, I
Okay,
think it was.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct, but there was, I would just be curious to see how much these people got before we gave any money.
We wanted to, we could do is just basically, we don't want to allocate our money anyway. And I'm sensing that we may want more information at this point.
What more information are we needing? Do we need them to rewrite the grant? What are we looking for? They already did that. We went to them and they resubmitted.
Is their income down now? Have they received money from the CARES Act?
If I,
Are the visitors down?
this is Kathy Walls, and can I say something?
Absolutely.
This spreadsheet that you have up that has fiscal year 20's contribution, I don't know where those numbers came from, but some of them are incorrect. If I look back in my system, you gave Arisafa had 1,000, beautification had 1,000. This was last year's budget. The senior center had 3,000. The library had 3,000. Historical Society had 5,000. Goodwill did have 9,000, and the community partnership had 1,750. That's what you gave in fiscal year 20.
Where do those numbers come from?
Diane put, I thought, well, I don't know. I thought
Well,
Diane put those.
it does seem that we have incomplete information.
I mean, we could talk about this again in January. You know, we could go ahead and approve an amended budget, not allocate everything. And, you know, because it seems to be a lot of questions.
I don't know that there's so many questions as some people are willing and some people are not, and you're trying to find a middle road on that. You know, I think that their grant proposals are pretty clear. But
And they're 6 months old.
of course, Mike.
Well, they are. I'm looking at the dates.
How much, Mr. Rahel, how much updated information did we receive? Was it just the library that updated it?
Well, yeah, because we had the library, the Historical Society, and the senior center. We assumed that Goodwill, you know, to Mr. Smith's point, didn't have any changes in their operations and had already submitted, you know, that request. And so, and you already approved Arisafa, and the folks from the beautification committee said, give us whatever you can. That's what they say every year. So there was no reason to reach out back to those folks.
And there were people who were going to go to these 3 places and ask them to resubmit.
We did.
And you did, that's what I'm saying. So, I'm agreeing with you that, yes, you did, but so I'm.
You know, Councilman Platt here again. I guess I'm thinking, and like I said, you just see so much information come along down the road. But Reopen Delaware has a website out, and they're starting to give monies or whatever to different nonprofits. I think there's 100 million or 100,000. I forget what the number is. It's out of Dana or something like that. DNANA. 100,000 to these different groups. Why not get it from the state and the city? I mean, I would just hope. I guess my question is, I would hope that these groups are looking into getting the money. I know businesses that are looking into getting the money. Mr. Barthel probably worked his butt off working through the red tape, getting the money for the CARES Act. Why aren't other people looking for it?
The mayor has a comment.
Yeah, couple thoughts, and Mr. Platt makes a good point. So Dana, which is right around the corner from me where I'm at right now, and I actually manage a nonprofit. We are not eligible for money because we are a C6, we're an advocacy organization, but C3s are eligible to receive CARES Act money that went from the feds to the state. The state has chosen Dana to actually be the distributor for CARES Act money to nonprofits up to $100,000. I believe the application process and the distribution start, I think tomorrow. But it's a very good organization. Sheila Bravo runs it. She used to work at one of the big banks here. Very, very sophisticated, very smart, works with nonprofits with 1 or 2 people and groups with up to 50 people, employees. So good organization. There are resources. You guys decide what you want to do locally, but there are different opportunities for different organizations that flow from the CARES Act to the state, and then and have been out there and are out there presently.
Well, then maybe the question is, go ahead, Mr. Barthel.
No, I just had a question for the mayor. Is that for hiring purposes and maintaining employees, or is that for everything as you know that we've been doing, those types of things?
I think the resources are used. I believe the requirements. It's not like the PPP. It's not like the loans that come through the Small Business Administration. These are more like what the state. What Damian DeStefano has done from the Division of Small Businesses. So this can be used for rent. It can be used for other kinds of things to maintain your operations. So they have great flexibility, provided that it comports with the CARES Act. And as I said, there are a bunch of nonprofits like the Delaware State Chamber of Commerce, which is a C6, which has never been eligible, nor are any chambers of commerce, because they're advocacy organizations. They're not C3s, but C3s are eligible.
So I'm looking at this online. This is a good thing about being right here. And Dana is something you have to join. There's a membership on it. And would you have to be a member of Dana before you could apply for funds through there?
I don't think so. That's a good question, Valerie. I don't think so. I believe they're just being used because they're a very responsible portal. They're in the community service building here, downtown in Wilmington here. They are, and there are a bunch of nonprofits that are in that building, of course. I think no, I'm sure they're not. You don't have to be a member. They're being used as the gateway and the administrators, if you will, to distribute resources on behalf of the state, because the state doesn't want to deal with all the different nonprofits. So they've provided the resources to Dana, and then nonprofits around the state will apply to Dana.
I'm not sure we have enough information at this point. Seems like there's a lot of questions.
I'd be happy to go to the Historical Society and ask about what CARES Act money they got and what they really need. I'll do that personally. Suzanne, you seem to have a good contact with the library. You can check out if they,
I can get in touch with Julie and ask. I suspect that a lot of their stuff goes through the county because they're part of the county library system, but I can certainly ask her.
yeah, maybe the county, gave them some more money. Then there's the senior center, and that's it. Who
I
knows?
was on the seniors, and like I said, they've been on hold because everything they're doing is they're basically shut down. That was the decision last time we talked about this.
I think that they
I
are.
will call Natalie tomorrow if you like it.
Why didn't you do that? Why don't we gather information, send it over to Bill? All right?
And let's get this information about Dana out there too. I mean, because like I said, there are resources for nonprofits. And
Well,
even
that's up to them to find it. Mike Conley found it, and it's up to them to find it.
I would give them a hand. It doesn't hurt, but I know businesses that are thriving that get the Payroll Protection Act that didn't need it. So I mean, I'm just saying, there's ways to get money for these people that need it.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's what Mike's was, payroll protection.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's a different than the CARES. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Okay. At this point, I can either, okay, we've gone through all the items. I can either ask for a motion, a discussion, and vote on the resolution, which would leave a lot of unallocated money, but free up everything under the expense category. And then I would recommend that we also, that we put placeholders on all the rest, the trash cans, the grant, the $33,000 FEMA grant, which we will vote on tonight, feasibility study, which we are not going to make any decisions till we hear back, wayfinding signs for 1,000, and then we just leave the rest unallocated. That'd be feasible, Mr. Barthel and Ms. Walls?
Yeah, Madam President, if I understand you correctly, basically what you're saying is you're going to take the 431,000, and add that to our budget, our current budget of 5,997,873. And then you're going to say, okay, and you're going to say these items will be allocated at this point. These items will go into a reserve account.
So we can revisit some future expenditures.
Right.
Does that seem like a reasonable approach for everyone?
So what can be spent and what's going into a reserve account? I don't understand that.
Well, okay, so the expenses that we have, if you will, when I say that we put together, are in expenses all the way down to right above your surplus number is 343,176. Now, if you said, okay, we're cool with all of that, we would approve the budget at, as I just said, with an increase of 431, you would then say, and expenditures of, if you approved 343,176, and then add to that whatever other items below that you want to fund right now. Now,
Right.
if you said, okay, we're just going to do the 343,176, then those additional items, and let's just say you said we're going to do the grant. So you'd add the grant to the 343,176, and those other items, for argument's sake, would go into the reserve, would make up the reserve account. Kathy, you good with that?
I actually think the money should be spent for the signs, the
Well,
1,000.
whatever, I'm just saying, whatever, that's your decision.
Right.
I think
I would think we take all of those that are listed now, the 8,200 for the trash cans, because there's still going to be some more research, the 33,000 for the grant, the 15,000 feasibility, but there's a gate there. No spending until council basically releases the next study, but you put
Right.
it in there. And then 1,000 for the wayfinding, and then we leave the rest unallocated to talk about nonprofits. And there could be some other things. We may in a month or two get more money, and that's a good thing. So how does everyone feel about that?
Right. The feasibility study gets set aside.
Russ, we can't hear you.
I don't know why that is. The feasibility study gets set aside. We commit to it, but it's set aside, right?
It would be shown in the budget, but it is a no-go until the city administrator comes back with more specific information and we have a more specific discussion
Right.
about
Right.
whether we want to proceed.
Just to clarify.
You
Yeah.
could, but and again, Kathy, I'm waiting to hear from you, but you could basically if you don't identify anything at this time, you would just say, okay, that bit, we're going to identify X to go into an expenditure now. And that other money isn't committed to anything. It's just quote
Right.
earmarked at this point in time. That 15,000 in everybody's mind is down the road, like you said, if you agree to do the feasibility study. Otherwise, it's just a number in that carried over account.
Yeah, you can either,
Yeah.
like we're going to do with the revenues, we're going to increase those budget lines by those amounts. So the total budget goes up by the 431,000. Then we're going to increase the expense lines by the amounts listed on your sheet. And then you'll have 87,824 more to balance the budget. You can either put them in the trash can line and the grant, matching line and the feasibility study. You can do some, or you could do all. So you would either put 87,824 into a restricted fund line to be decided later on, or you can fund all of those three with stipulations, or those four with stipulations, and leave 30,624 to discuss later with the nonprofit contributions and anything else you want to do. But for this particular amendment, those are the numbers that would change. We would add these to the budget line and formally change the budget with a resolution, and then that would be on the website, and that would be our new budget.
I mean, if we could, if we wanted to not make a decision on feasibility till we had more, why don't we take that one off? And so we add 8,200, 33,000 and 1,000 to the 343,176, and the rest all unallocated. Does that make sense?
That would be 45,624 in unallocated. You're amending it into the budget, but you're putting it in a restricted category because it's not quite yet decided.
May I ask just one question? The lead time on the signs, is that a whole winter project, Russ?
Yeah,
Is that lead time on the signs? How long is that? Because I mean, if we're going to put the trash cans on Delaware Street, get it all paved on, say by spring, I would have a problem even spending that money tonight just to make sure that everything's ready to go May 1st, so that when they start paving it, it's all together at one time.
I
don't know what the lead time is. That's what we can talk about that next month.
I'd say a few months.
Okay, well then I'll go to restricted. I'm okay with that. I think we should know what that lead time should be.
I don't understand.
Well,
He
they've got to
wants
be.
to know if from.
They have to be printed. They have to be where we're going to place them. That type of thing.
Yeah.
I just want to know how the day you order them. I want to know what the delivery date's going to be, just so that we're all kind of together when
Right.
when Delaware Street comes together.
The signs are one thing, the mounting is another.
Right. Well,
And
that's something Mr. Barthel can put together. So
Yeah.
we got time. We got time for that. That's what I'm saying.
Right. I
Okay.
I ordered these other signs I just ordered. I got them within about 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay.
Okay, so if are we comfortable at this point, since there seems to be question on feasibility too, we comfortable moving in 8,200, 33,000 and 1,000 into that 343 category, which means expenses.
Yes.
And that will leave us 45,624 in funds that have not been allocated. We'll revisit the feasibility study, revisit the nonprofits and all of that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So then I would need some language for the what's in our packets in terms of a resolution. I need some numbers, I guess would be.
Okay, well, and I'll ask you. Go ahead, Janet.
It would be 6,428,873.
Right.
Okay, 6 million, repeat that.
6,428,873.
Okay.
Am I correct, Kathy?
Yes.
Yes,
Correct.
that is correct.
And that would be in both lines, 6,428,873.
Mhm.
Correct.
Okay, and that basically, okay. All right, do I have a motion for resolution 2020-28 amending the fiscal year 2021 general fund?
So moved.
A second?
Second it.
Okay, I'm going to read this. Whereas the city administrator has presented a proposed amendment to the fiscal year 2021 general fund to city council members, the mayor and the city treasurer. And whereas the mayor and city council members have advertised and held public meetings to discuss and make appropriate amendments to the current budgets. And whereas the original fiscal year 2021 general fund budget is balanced at $5,997,873. And whereas the city council of the city of Newcastle wishes to amend the general budget to $6,428,873. And whereas the general budget is to be managed by the city administrator, now therefore it is hereby resolved that the fiscal year 2021 general budget is amended at $6,428,873. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, it's passed unanimously. Thank you very much.
Ms. Ratchford, I just have a thing. We have a lot more items on here, and two of these items, discussion on separation day and discussion regarding the floating dock, can be extremely lengthy. Can those be put off to another meeting or another time while we finish up the other remaining items, which we still have several to go?
Well, I have the fire companies here this evening to talk. Some of these would go pretty quickly, I think. Since we've already talked about the FEMA, hopefully that would go. Then maybe the discussion, I don't know what the deadline on the separation day grant. I think the separation day discussion maybe could be a committee.
The separation day grant needs to be submitted by December 1st.
Okay, well then that answers that one.
Oh,
Okay.
that wasn't one that I was referring to. I was referring to points 5 and 8.
Okay.
Agenda items 5 and 8.
Can we postpone the discussion about separation 2021?
Right.
Okay, I'm open to that. I would say, okay, so is everyone's okay with that? Then is there a motion to postpone that discussion?
I make a motion to postpone the separation day discussion.
Second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, opposed? Okay, so that one is postponed. The floating dock, I think it would be something we could also postpone. I think it would be good to get just a framework on that. We could actually even do that one next and just get a high level perspective from the fire company.
Okay.
And the rest of them should be pretty straightforward. So we'll try to remove quickly from those. And I would say at this point, if the fire company's here, we will go to the discussion regarding the floating dock. And this is really to try to get the fire company's perspective on their needs. So I'm going to open it up to either Tim Moore or the chief, who's available.
I have Tim Moore in the room.
Okay, Tim, if you could kind of give us an overview. There were some questions at the last meeting. Mr. Moore? You with us?
Says he's there.
Are you muted?
No, he's not muted. If there's someone else from the fire department in the attendees room, could you raise your hand? I'm not sure who they all are.
I'm looking at the names and that seems like he might be the only one.
Hey, Tim, are you coming online here? Okay. Okay, well, I don't hear him, so we are going to go ahead and it may have to get postponed. I would like him just to give an overview. I think it's good for people to get perspective. Okay, let's go to the next item, which is a resolution approving the submission of the separation day grant, which has to be done because it's due December. Okay, this is resolution 2020-29. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, second.
Second.
Second, okay. Read it. Resolution 2020-29, resolution approving grant and aid application for 2022 Separation Day, whereas the General Assembly of the State of Delaware offers grant and aid appropriations to support the activities of nonprofit organizations which provide services to the citizens of Delaware, and whereas the City of Newcastle applies for this grant and aid each year to help fund the Separation Day celebration, and whereas the City of Newcastle received $35,000 for the 2021 Separation Day event and has requested 35,000.
Mhm.
Okay, 35,000 for 2022. And now therefore be it resolved that the Newcastle City Council hereby authorizes the city to apply for grant and aid and help support the 2022 Separation Day activities. Comments from staff or discussion from council? Staff, okay. We ready to vote then? All those in favor of resolution 2020-29 indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, it's passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay.
Madam President,
yes.
Madam President, if I may, I'm sorry, I did receive a text from Timmy Moore who said he's having problems with his mic. So I don't know,
Okay.
Tim, if you want to call in again and maybe try, if you want to give it a shot, just, it's, you know, he
Right.
just muted. So anyway, I'm sorry.
He's on now, but he's muted.
Yeah, I see. Yeah,
But if he has problems with his mic, he's not going to be,
yeah.
unless he tries to call in. If he tries to call in, then we'll let him in, but we're going to keep doing our business because we do have, as Ms. Leary pointed out, a lot. Okay, then the next item is a motion, discussion, and vote on resolution 2020-30. It's a resolution authorizing acceptance of FEMA's pre-disaster and mitigation grant. Do I have a motion to consider 2020-30?
So
So
moved.
moved. Oh, second.
Okay, motion from Mr. Smith, second from Ms. Leary. I'm going to read the resolution. It's resolution 2020-30, resolution authorizing acceptance of FEMA's pre-disaster mitigation grant allocation of $33,000 as part of the city match, and authorizing the city administrator to enter into all necessary agreements involved. And that's the correct is 33, correct? 33 is the number, correct?
Correct.
3,000.
33,000? Correct, Ms. Walls?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, whereas in the past 20 years, 9 federally declared disasters have caused the loss of lives, personal injuries, and on average $6.50 per capita in property taxes in Newcastle County, and whereas billions of dollars worth of residential, commercial, and coastal property in Delaware are at risk from flooding, hurricanes, and weather-related damages, and whereas the Stafford Act, as was amended by the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000, Section 322, DMA2K PL 106-39, which provides approaches to mitigation planning and emphasizes the need for state, local, and tribal entities to closely coordinate mitigation planning and implementation efforts as outlined in 44 CFR Part 201. And whereas the City of Newcastle continues to plan and to provide its citizens with the most effective tools to help with riverine resiliency issues, flood emergency plans. And whereas one aspect of the flood emergency plans is an inventory of the city's built environment, including surveying of first floor and adjacent grade elevations for the most vulnerable structures in the city, obtaining additional structure information, including building type, wood, steel, concrete, etc., foundation type, basement or slab, occupancy type, single family, multifamily, etc., and number of stories. Preparation of depth grids to be used in further modeling or existing and alternative dike raising elevations, running of hazardous model to estimate the benefits of multiple scenarios. Whereas the City of Newcastle has been awarded with the help of Natural Hazards section of the Delaware Emergency Management Agency, a FEMA pre-disaster mitigation grant, PDMCPL 03 DE 2019006, the grant in assisting the city in developing its flood emergency plans. And whereas the overall budget for completion of the flood emergency plans is estimated at $132,000, $99,000 of which will be reimbursed by the grant and $33,000 to be paid from city funds. And whereas the City Council is determined to designate William J. Barthel, City Administrator, to manage the project and coordinate the grant requirements for reporting and reimbursement. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Newcastle accept FEMA's 99,000 pre-disaster mitigation grant PDMC PL03DE 2019-006 and directs William J. Marthel, City Administrator, to manage the project and coordinate program requirements for reporting and reimbursement of the FEMA's grant funding and the city's matching funds. Be it further resolved, the City Council hereby approves the expenditures of $132,000 to complete the flood emergency plans, with $99,000 of such expense to be reimbursed by the grant and remaining $33,000 to be paid for by city funds. Any other discussion? Then I'm going to ask for a vote. All those in favor of Resolution 2020-30 indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we've unanimously passed 2020-30. Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to skip over that. The next is this is a resolution to establish a temporary transportation plan advisory committee. To have a motion to consider resolution 2020-31.
So moved.
A second.
Second.
A second, Mr. Platt. Okay, I'm going to read the resolution. This is resolution 2020-31. It's a resolution to establish a temporary transportation plan update advisory committee. Whereas the City Council approved resolution 2020-05, committing $15,000 for each of the next 2 fiscal years for a WillMapco transportation plan update. And whereas the City of Newcastle is undertaking this transportation plan update as a joint effort between WillMapco, the City of Newcastle, and DelDOT. And whereas these entities will work together to develop the City of Newcastle transportation plan update to better plan and serve the transportation needs of area residents. And whereas the City Council believes that it would be beneficial to establish an advisory committee composed of community members to provide additional input and recommendations regarding local City of Newcastle transportation plan update. Now therefore be it resolved that by the City Council of the City of Newcastle that the following individuals are hereby appointed to a temporary transportation plan update committee: George Velaskakis, Tom Clayton, John Lafferty, Monty Gerhart, Aaron Fogarty, Sarah Luoma, Cindy Snyder, Aretha Brown, Frank Moriarty, and Tammy Vickers. I certainly appreciate all these people being willing to stand up and work on this and to gather input from others. This is going to be a process that council is certainly is going to be actively involved in. We'll have final approval, but we need members of the community, and we appreciate this diverse group of people being willing to stand up and participate. So any other comments or questions on this?
Just one question. It says it's temporary, but there's no date. Does it run for the 2 years of the WillMapco project, and do we need to specify that, or does it run as long as it's needed till they complete their work, or I don't know.
It would be B. Yeah, I think that they'll get that early participation, and then at some point, once we have that, it'll go through some other processes for final approval. I don't think that we need a date, do we, Mr. Barthel or Mr. Losco?
This is the solicitor. I don't think you need a date. You can always terminate it at will as the need arises.
Okay, just curious.
Okay, good question. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to ask for a vote on resolution 2020-31. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Oppose? No. Okay. No, there are no no's, excuse me. Everybody said aye, as unanimously approved, but there are no no's. Okay, just clarify that. Okay, Mr. Moore is on. If I'm going to have Mr. Moore come on, and he can give us an overview of the needs of Goodwill and what they're trying to achieve. Mr. Moore.
Yes, can anybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, good. Sorry about that. I'm not too tech savvy here. So a couple weeks ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, City Administrator Bill Orthel and President Ratchford myself and the Chief Majewski, we met in discussions with our needs in reference to the floating dock down at the wharf. It, it's definitely beneficial for the Goodwill Fire Company in order to have a spot, and we thank the city for reaching out and council for reaching out, asking what our needs are. Years ago, probably just for a little history, probably 16 years ago, our old rescue boat we had down there at the old pier. And one time it broke free with the wave action, the amount of traffic that comes up and down, the shipping channel there in the river. And the position of it then wasn't very conducive for the boat being there as it was moored up. So we had a couple issues there. But if the boat was repositioned, so basically the front of the boat, if it points to Jersey, that would be the better position for our boat. Reason being is it would handle the wake from the ships that go up and down that channel. So we have a little bit more protection. The other benefit is during the spring through the fall months, even into November, with the weather being as nice as it's been, it enables us to minimize our response time. So currently now, although we keep the boat hooked up to our marine rescue truck, when a call does come in, we have to go down South Street to 3rd Street and make that, pretty tight turn, and worry about any oncoming traffic that's coming from the boat ramp now. So that can be a little challenging. During the summertime, everybody knows that the park is very, very populated. So that hinders us with response in getting the boat in the water at a reasonable time for responses. The other thing that it will allow is instead of trailering it, we can just take our marine unit and just go strictly down to the wharf, load up and go. We don't have to worry about the tide situation, especially depending upon the number of people that we have going on the boat from the fire company. So it makes things a little bit safer. I don't know if anybody has had a chance to watch when we launch that boat at low tide. It's a little dicey because we have to literally, somebody has to stand on the trailer, undo it. The boat has to back off and then come up the shore, and then we'll pick somebody up on shore if that person is needed. With having the floating dock there, with the amount of traffic that also in the summertime that also comes up along that river, is God forbid if something were to happen, it enables us to go to the floating dock, which will have a ramp that goes to the wharf. So that way, for any medical conditions, if we have to get a gurney down to somebody to get them off the boat, it's a safer area to do so. Currently, we average about 100, between 70 and 100 water rescue calls in general a year. Roughly 40 calls to 50 calls are on the Delaware River. The other calls are what we call inland water rescue calls, which are from storms, your cars in high water, swift water calls from these heavy rainstorms. So it's definitely a benefit for us for responses in order to have be able to have a spot, down on the floating dock there.
Mr. Moore, would you explain, I think there's another rescue unit that's actually not going to be there anymore. So Goodwill's going to have more responsibilities on the river.
So currently, when a water rescue incident occurs on the Delaware River, we get a minimum of a 3-boat response and 1 aviation unit. So the Coast Guard, currently out of Jersey, they are closing up that satellite station. So the closest Coast Guard station is going to be out of Philadelphia. Depending upon what the incident is, we are the first line of defense until they get there. Depending upon, they might have to go over Jersey somewhere, they might have to go up to Philadelphia somewhere on an incident. So that takes away from one of our resources. Currently, we are the only boat north of the C&D Canal that have direct access to the Delaware River. So just to give you an example of an incident, if an incident happens in the area of the Delaware Memorial Bridge or the Christina River there, where the Christina comes out to the Delaware River, Holloway Terrace has a rescue boat. We have a rescue boat, and we would get a rescue boat from Delaware City. So Holloway Terrace, they don't have a ramp anymore that's accessible to them in their territory or in their area, even outside of Wilmington. So they come down to Newcastle in order to make a response.
Mr. Moore, there's some issues with the ramp, the current ramp now, is that correct?
So the Goodwill Fire Company, over the past year and a half, we're trying to get funding to replace the existing ramp. The existing ramp has been modified back in roughly 2008, 2010 by putting a steel plate at the end of it to extend the ramp, so we are able to launch at low tide. Unfortunately, the amount of wave action and tidal action over the years, it's deteriorated that ramp pretty good, to the fact that we have rebar showing and all. So we do have money that we got allocated, roughly $100,000 for that goes towards the replacement of that ramp. And we're currently working on securing the rest of the funds in January, submitting that with the help of Senator Poore and Representative Brown, and so we can extend the ramp and bring it up to par, so that way we are able to launch and make sure that we're able to launch at any condition. The ramp is nothing elaborate. It is basically the existing ramp as it is now, except longer. So the length of the ramp that we have spec'd out will be 125 feet versus I want to say close to 90 feet now, I believe is what the survey showed.
And Mr. Moore, that just to be clear, I mean, you need the ramp because you need to access all year long, but if there was a floating dock on the pier, you would keep the Goodwill Fire Company boat there? during the high season or the most frequent rescue season, which is, I assume, warm weather when people are out?
Yes, so the existing so the ramp we would use all year round. The only time that we are unable to use that ramp is if there is significant ice buildup that prohibits us from using that. There have been occasions that we have asked the city if they could come down with their backhoe and break up that ice just in case we had to get out there. But um, 9 out of 10 chances, if that ice is built up that much or that bad, our boat wouldn't be out on the water anyway, just for safety reasons, damage to the hull, and safety for our personnel. So the floating dock would be utilized from spring. So you figure whenever weather starts to become nice, March, April, up to November. As of right now, November is looking like a good month. So it would be, a weather, dependent mainly at the end of the season on how long that the boat stays in the water. Because one of the things that we have to worry about if keeping it in the water too long is at nighttime freezing. So we don't want any lines to freeze. So then we'll really be in deep trouble. So it would be from, the March or April to, I would say, November would be a safe, a safe time frame.
And that would be that would be how many rescues out of the total rescues would be coming from the water? And then what would that do to your response time?
So the response time, it's hard to give you a good number on cutting down for response times. I would say on a good day, if we go from the firehouse to the boat ramp with no obstacles, no facing cars head on, no having to find cars to move so we can make the turn in order to back down the ramp. Um, I would say that it would be safe to say that, and that's given that there is a crew in-house, we can launch within 6 minutes, 5 to 6 minutes. I know that sounds like a long time, but actually by the time you gather everybody up and, we're out pretty quick, the longest is making sure that backing down a ramp, we have to open up the gate because it's locked. So that takes, a minute to do that. And then backing down the ramp and then launching it. So having the dock, only thing we would have to do is just hop in our Marine Rescue Unit and drive down Delaware Street, and walk out on a floating dock, start it up and go. So I would say that we can cut out time, by a couple minutes, but I know it may not sound like a lot, having just a couple minutes cut down on your time, but that's the best case scenario that all goes well, going from the firehouse to the boat ramp. If we do have obstacles, it can take us 10 minutes, 12 minutes to launch.
And we're not going to make, decision tonight, but we did want to, we thank Mr. Moore for being available here to answer questions. Any questions for Mr. Moore?
Actually, and this doesn't refer, Timmy, this is Valerie Leary. This doesn't refer to our dock. It's just curious while I have you on the phone. When you do a river response, is Deepwater or Pennsville, they no longer launch, or?
So on certain incidences, we have our grids set up a little different. So we don't have them on our grids. The individual fire companies can choose what rescue boats that they want on their grids.
Right.
So
Okay.
currently, Goodwill Fire Company does not have them on our grids. The reason being is not because they're not welcomed or we don't want anything to do with them, is over the years, their response has dwindled. So what ends up happening is, although they're counted as a rescue boat to come out and help, it minimizes the other rescue boat that has to get dispatched. So if we go out on a dispatch and they don't get out, then they dispatch another boat because we're one boat shy. So
Right.
now that's a time delay in order for another boat to get out on the water.
Right.
To,
So
you
the
know,
response check time is, they're all volunteer, as you know, so it's just, yeah, I understand. Thank
yeah,
you.
and a lot of times they, unfortunately, they haven't been able to make the response.
Right. Not a
The
surprise.
mayor, is a question.
Tim, Mike Quaranta, I'm not sure, maybe you I don't think I heard you answer Mrs. Ratchford's question before. You're going to keep one boat at the floating dock, is that correct? One boat at all times?
We only have two boats. We have
Right.
a 24-foot Boston Whaler, and then
Right.
we have a 12-foot Zodiac. The 24-foot Boston Whaler we would keep at the floating dock for as long as we can throughout the
Right.
year. So that would be through
Okay.
March, April to November.
Got it. I guess then real quick, Mr. Barthel, how many boats can the floating dock accommodate? Because we have a lot of residents that have recreational boats, and it would be certainly nice for the council to be able to have the opportunity to avail our own residents who have boats with some access to a dock in their own city.
It would be two at the most. And if they're taking one, then you would have one. And
Okay.
the intention was not, just so you're, because there had been talk originally of doing boat slips out, and of course that didn't happen. And then the second phase was what you're talking about now, which was to attract other commercial vehicles, taxis, ferries, that type of thing, for people to be, for people to come in and of course from people from the city to get on those boats and access the water. Now, if council decided they wanted to make that a day boating slip for one resident at a time, I don't know how we would, I don't know how that would be accommodated. It would be, we'd have to set up scheduling and that type of thing to get that done.
Miss, this is Council President Retro. I don't think our permit allows that. The permit that was originally
Not for
procured.
day, but I'm just, well, if you wanted to request.
You'd
it,
have
you
to,
could.
it's only for commercial boats, so it would
Right.
have to be, there'd be
Right,
a change to the permit, and it was, actually the design was modified, so
right,
that would have to be some more research to accommodate that.
right.
Okay. Anything else for Mr. Moore? We have, we're kind of late tonight.
Just one question. Tim, Councilman Platt here. How many vehicles would be on Delaware Street during a water rescue? And I asked that question only because it's the main part of town, and you put two fire trucks between the Strand and the wharf, and it shuts everything down.
Right. So I believe there would be a fire lane, so to speak, down there. So our marine unit, it would just be our marine unit, whether the duty officer, which is a small utility vehicle like a Ford Explorer or
Right.
a Tahoe, whether they meet us there, that would be the only thing. So our marine rescue unit, which is, I would say lengthwise, 12 foot, 14 foot, something like that.
I mean, it's a regular truck. I guess, I don't want to tie your breath. I guess my concern was having four vehicles there at the time.
Yeah, no, there wouldn't be, I would not say that at any time there would be four Goodwill Fire Company vehicles. The only way that there would be multiple emergency vehicles there is if there was an incident that happened where there was multiple casualties out on the water, and we used the floating dock to get victims back there and come out on a wharf into an ambulance. That would be the only time that I would foresee having multiple emergency vehicles there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your service.
Yep, thank you.
We very much appreciate goodwill. So any other questions for Mr. Moore? And thank you for waiting so long. Talk to
Yep.
us.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks.
We have one more item on the agenda, and that's a resolution 2020-32. It's a resolution approving a license agreement for encroachment into the city right-of-way on West 3rd Street, allowing new construction of steps located at 46 West 3rd Street. Do I have a motion to consider?
So moved.
A
Second.
second. Okay, second for Mr. Smith. I'm going to read this and we'll have a discussion. This is a resolution approving a license agreement encroachment in the city right-of-way on West 3rd Street to allow new construction of steps located at 46 West 3rd Street. Whereas Diascanis Homes, Inc. has applied to the mayor and council for a building permit to construct a new dwelling at 46 West 3rd Street, also known as tax parcel 21-015.30-151. And whereas the Historic Area Commission has approved the drawings for the proposed dwelling and the front steps of the proposed structure will encroach on the right-of-way of 3rd Street, a depth of 1.5 feet along a portion of the building as shown in the attached exhibit. And whereas in exchange for a license agreement to permit the aforesaid encroachment, the applicant has agreed to waive any damages for the use of the right-of-way by mayor and council, and prior to issuance of a building permit shall execute a license agreement in form acceptable to the city and to pay for all recording fees for said license agreement. Now therefore be it resolved that the application of Diascanis Homes, Inc. for a license to continue the encroachment of a building located at 46 West 3rd Street, known as parcel 21-01.15.30-151, as described in the above recitals, be approved, and the building official is authorized to issue a permit for construction of the front steps on the public right-of-way, consistent with the attached exhibit upon execution of the appropriate license agreement. I don't know if Mr. Bergstrom's still here or.
Yes.
Hi, Mr. Bergstrom. Can you explain the purpose of this resolution? And is this something we frequently do?
Infrequently, but we do it. The form was prepared by Mr. Lasco, the city solicitor, for previous application on the East 2nd Street, I think. But the gist of it is the Historic Area Commission has set the front yard setback to match up with the adjacent buildings. They've also set the elevation of the first floor at a certain height. So to get from the building down to the street in front of the place, they need 4 steps, I think, and they won't quite fit in the setback that these buildings are from the edge of the public right of way. It's very wide sidewalk there, but they need to use about a foot of it. This won't be as much as adjacent properties use for their front steps, but this will, you just can't make the steps too steep, so they need a step or part of a step out in the street for approximately a foot. We've given them a 1.5 feet plus or minus in this resolution.
So it would be consistent, I'm sorry, consistent with the kind of the front view of all the other homes.
The front view, it'll line up with the fronts of the house to the left, and it'll be the height, the floor height will line up with the floor height for the adjacent houses. Yes.
Good question.
So I just want to make sure, because it's hard to see where it comes out on the sidewalk. So in being familiar with a couple of the houses down there, these are not going to extend any further than the ones that are already there.
The front of that porch is going to line up with the front of the adjacent house to the left.
No, I'm talking about the steps, just where the steps extend. They're not going to extend out any further than, the house next to it.
No, they're approximately the same because it's approximately the same first floor and the same height. But this is new construction. You have to grant permission for them to encroach on the right of way.
Right. Oh no, I'm just asking about where the steps are. I mean, if it was coming out further than the ones around it, then that's a concern. But so.
One question for Mr. Lasco. It says right away by mayor and council. I mean, we used to kind of refer to ourselves as mayor and council, but now we just say city. Should it be mayor and council or just city?
It should just be city, but the license agreement will be drafted appropriately as to the city.
So we don't need to change the resolution.
It's in the whereas clause, so I don't think it's necessary to really change it there.
It's also on the first whereas, yeah, it's a couple of times.
But again, that's not part of the resolution. The resolution is the now therefore be it resolved part.
Okay, got it. All right. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor of voting for resolution 2020-32 indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Okay, this resolution had passed unanimously. Thanks for everyone's patience. That's the last agenda item. And unless there's no other, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Good night.
All right.
Good night.
Good night.
Kim?
Yes.
Could you hang in for just a second after, just to check audio?
Sure.
Okay, I don't know why people can't hear me. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, but there were a couple of times when you started talking, it was very faint. And it wasn't like you were any further away.
No. All right, the microphones are up by the camera, and I guess I just have to speak up a little bit. I've had that problem before where I've said something and then somebody right after me has repeated the exact same thing, like I didn't say anything. So I just thought, they're not hearing. I've been checking my instruction booklet and everything, and I guess this is the best I get. I have tried adjusted a few things. So, okay.
I think you can use a headphone from a phone that you can talk into. And that usually has a microphone on it and the earbuds.
I do. I have an actual headset with a microphone. I'd rather not have to resort to that.
Right.
Okay.